Right, so today we're going to be taking a deep dive into something pretty wild,
Oh, yeah.
the Bohemian
I
Groves.
love it.
You know, you guys sent in this audio documentary by Alex Jones,
Hmm.
and, well, he makes some pretty out there claims about this place, this
Yes.
super exclusive
Yeah.
California retreat, right?
Yeah.
He's talking about secret societies and rituals,
Hmm.
and even suggesting there's like this whole plot for world domination going on among the global elite.
Yeah, it's fascinating how these types of claims about
Right.
these super powerful people meeting in secret, they really tap into our deepest fears about the unknown,
Yeah.
Like what
Yeah.
what are they really doing?
Exactly.
What are they hiding?
Right. Like, is there really a hidden
Yeah.
hand controlling everything?
Exactly.
And Jones really goes all in on this, right? Like, he claims
He does.
he actually snuck into this gathering back in 2000
Wow.
and got some footage with a hidden camera.
Or the hidden camera, huh?
Yeah. The documentary, like, really focuses on something called the cremation of care ceremony,
Right.
which, according to Jones, is like full of occult symbolism
Mm-hmm.
and a mock human sacrifice.
Yeah, it's important to, I guess, before we even get into it, I think it's important to just remind everybody that, Alex Jones is, a radio host and
Yeah.
filmmaker
Right.
who is known for promoting, well, shall we say, conspiracy theories.
Yeah, for sure.
So
His work is definitely controversial,
it is
and it's been the subject of a lot of debate, so
a lot.
just putting that out there.
Yeah, I think with someone like Alex Jones, it's
Right.
It's really important to remember that he
Yeah.
is, well, he's a master of using
Right.
very emotionally charged language.
Right.
And he often,
Right.
exaggerates things for effect.
Good.
So we really need to kind of unpack his claims very carefully
Okay.
and see what evidence he actually presents.
Okay, so let's start with like the basics.
Sure.
Where is this Bohemian Grove? What do we even know about it?
All right, so the Bohemian Grove is this 2,700-acre redwood forest
Wow.
located in Sonoma County, Northern California.
Okay.
It's owned by the Bohemian Club,
Mm-hmm.
which was founded way back in 1873.
It's been around for a while.
Yeah, over 150 years,
Wow.
which definitely adds to the mystique.
Right.
Initially, the club was more of a retreat for
Mhm.
artists and writers,
Okay.
a place to kind of escape societal norms and
Sure.
embrace creativity.
Okay.
But over time, its membership has evolved to
Mhm.
include some pretty influential figures.
Okay, like who?
Oh, you name it. Presidents, politicians, business leaders, media moguls, you name it.
So it went from like a bohemian hangout to a gathering of the global elite.
It did.
That's a big shift.
It is, and that exclusivity
Yeah.
has fueled all sorts of speculation
Well.
about what really goes on behind closed doors.
Yeah, I mean, secret societies have always kind of
Of course.
activated people, right?
Sure. Always. I mean, they're the subject of, folklore and myths and
Right.
and conspiracy theories.
For sure.
I mean, it's that irresistible pull of the unknown, right?
Right, and Jones specifically focuses on their annual 2-week gathering,
Mm-hmm.
which they call a summer encampment.
Right, right.
He suggests it's a lot more than just a bunch of
Yeah.
powerful guys hanging out, having a barbecue.
Right. Jones's narrative really takes center stage here.
Yeah.
He paints this picture of these elites engaging in these bizarre rituals
Right.
that he links back to ancient practices,
Mhm.
things like Babylonian
Mhm.
or Druidic ceremonies.
And the cremation of care ceremony, that's his
that's his big
piece of evidence.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
He describes a procession that includes a bound effigy
Mm-hmm.
and culminates in this fiery ceremony
Okay.
in front of this massive owl statue.
I've heard about that owl statue.
Oh, yeah.
Sounds pretty imposing.
Oh, it is.
What is the significance of the owl in all of this?
Well, the owl holds a lot of symbolic weight across different cultures.
Correct.
It can represent, wisdom, knowledge, even a connection to the spiritual realm,
Uh-huh.
but it can also be associated with darkness,
Okay.
secrecy,
Right.
and the unknown.
Right.
Jones definitely leans heavily on the latter interpretation,
Sure.
using the owl to bolster his claims of a sinister agenda.
Okay, so we've got this strange ritual,
Sure.
this giant owl statue. But what kind of evidence does Jones actually offer to support these claims?
Well, he presents a few things.
Okay.
First, there are audio recordings of the cremation of care ceremony.
Okay.
You can hear chanting, speeches, and the sounds of pyrotechnics.
Mm-hmm.
He also includes some well,
Yeah.
some grainy video footage.
Grainy, so you can't really see what's going
It's
on.
hard to tell. And
Wow.
still photos that
Okay.
he claims show the owl statue and parts of the ritual.
Right. But if the footage is grainy, I mean, wouldn't that make it hard to actually see what's going on?
It does,
Yeah.
and that's where things get tricky, right?
Yeah.
Because grainy footage and still photos, they're really open to interpretation.
Right.
What one person sees as clear evidence,
Yeah.
another might just see as ambiguous
Right.
shapes and shadows.
Totally.
And Jones definitely uses this to his advantage.
Yeah.
You know, he points to these specific details,
Right.
highlighting things that support his narrative,
Okay.
while downplaying or ignoring anything that might contradict it.
Right. So he's kind of shaping the narrative.
He
to
is.
fit his claims.
Absolutely.
Okay.
He also presents images
Okay.
from a Bohemian Club program.
Uh-huh.
There's a small demon figure
Okay.
and an image of a burning human form.
Uh-huh.
And Jones really focuses on the anatomical details of this burning figure,
Okay.
suggesting that it resembles a child.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's a pretty
Definitely.
heavy accusation.
It is.
Okay.
And this is a prime example of how Jones uses emotionally charged imagery
Yeah.
and language
Right.
to manipulate his audience.
Okay.
By invoking something as taboo as child sacrifice,
Right.
he's really aiming to trigger this visceral reaction of horror and disgust, right?
Sure.
Making it easier for people to kind of accept his claims
Okay.
without really critically examining the evidence.
So it's like he's appealing to your emotions
Absolutely.
rather than your logic.
It is fear-mongering at its finest, really.
Okay.
He also interviews
Right.
people who live near the Bohemian Grove, right?
Right. Yeah. He talks to like locals and stuff.
Yeah, and you know, their responses are all over the map.
Yeah, I bet.
Some dismiss the whole thing as nonsense,
Sure.
while others seem kind of intrigued or
Mhm.
even a bit spooked.
Yeah, I could see that.
It definitely adds to the overall
Yeah.
sense of mystery surrounding the place.
Right. But how do we know if those interviews are, I
Right.
mean, how much of that is
Yeah.
taken out of context or edited to fit his narrative?
We don't know. It's
Yeah.
important to remember that those interviews,
Yeah.
they are carefully selected and edited
Right.
to fit the narrative.
Yeah.
We don't know how many people he interviewed,
Right.
what other perspectives he might have encountered,
Totally.
or how the editing process might have shaped
Yeah.
the final product.
Right. So it sounds like we need to be careful
We do.
about taking those interviews at face value.
Yeah, there might be more to the story
Yeah.
than what Jones is showing us.
So even though he presents some intriguing information,
He does.
his interpretation really relies heavily on speculation
Yeah,
and connecting dots that may or may not actually be related.
right.
And we have to remember that Jones has,
Yeah.
built a career on
Absolutely.
promoting these conspiracy theories.
Right, and his work often relies on presenting speculation as fact and cherry-picking evidence to support his pre-existing worldview.
So it's not necessarily that everything he's presenting is like
Oh.
outright fabricated,
Right.
but it's the way he's framing it,
Yeah.
the connections he makes,
The conclusions he draws.
and the conclusions he draws that
Yeah.
we need to be cautious about.
Exactly. Instead of just
And I-
blindly accepting his claims at face value,
Yeah.
we need to ask ourselves some critical questions.
Okay, like what?
Like, what evidence is he actually presenting?
Okay.
What are the potential biases
Ah.
in his presentation?
Yeah.
Are there other possible interpretations of the information he's sharing?
Okay, so we need to be critical thinkers
We do?
and not just passively absorb what we're being told.
Exactly.
Let's delve into some of those claims
do it.
and examine them a little bit closer.
Okay.
One of the more shocking claims Jones makes
Mm-hmm.
is that he witnessed a human sacrifice.
Oh.
But if we look at the evidence he provides, it's based entirely on this effigy
Right.
used in the cremation of care ceremony.
Right.
He doesn't actually show any visual evidence of a real person
Sure.
being harmed.
No.
So it sounds like he's making a huge leap in logic there.
He is.
Just because they're burning an effigy
Right.
doesn't automatically mean they're engaging in human sacrifice.
Exactly. And this is where his use of language comes into play, right?
Right.
He's using these terms like devil worship,
Right.
occult, and global domination
Uh-huh.
to frame the entire narrative, right?
Right. So it's like he's trying to create this atmosphere of dread
Yes.
and suspicion.
Absolutely.
You're almost waiting for the scary music to
Right.
start playing in the background.
Exactly. He's essentially constructing a horror movie
Right.
in the listener's mind,
Okay.
making it much easier to accept his interpretation without question.
So we need to kind of separate the sensationalism from
Yeah.
the facts.
Absolutely.
Just because someone claims to have infiltrated a secret society
Right.
and witnessed something shocking
Doesn't make it true.
doesn't make it true. Okay, so we've got to look beyond the surface,
We do.
examine the evidence carefully,
Yes.
and consider alternative explanations.
For sure.
All right, I'm ready to do some digging.
Okay.
I want to move past the sensationalism and look at this whole thing from a broader perspective.
Okay.
I'm curious about the historical and cultural context of secret societies and rituals.
Okay.
Could you shed some light on that for us?
Sure. It's important to remember that secret societies and rituals have existed throughout history and across various cultures.
Okay.
They often serve as a way for people to connect,
Yeah.
share beliefs, and explore ideas that might be considered taboo
Okay.
outside the group.
So just because a group is secretive doesn't automatically mean they're up to something evil.
Exactly. Think about,
Right.
college fraternities and sororities, certain religious orders, even some professional organizations.
Right.
They all have their own rituals and traditions
Yeah.
that might seem strange
Sure.
or even secretive to outsiders.
Right.
But that doesn't necessarily mean they're doing anything harmful.
Okay, I see your point, but
Yeah.
those examples are generally considered pretty harmless.
Yeah.
What makes the Bohemian Grove different?
Well,
Why all the secrecy and speculation?
I think it's a combination of factors, honestly.
Okay.
You've got the high-profile membership,
Uh-huh.
the historical context, and the rituals themselves, right?
Right.
They all contribute to the mystique.
Sure.
When you have powerful people gathering in secret,
Yeah.
it's natural for people to wonder what they're discussing, what their motives are.
Right. It plays into that fear that there's a hidden hand
Because-
controlling the world.
Yeah, and that fear can be amplified by the use of symbolism
Sure.
and ritual.
Right.
Symbols can evoke strong emotions and associations.
Of course.
Rituals can create a sense of mystery and awe.
So is Jones right to interpret the Bohemian Grove rituals as evidence of something nefarious?
Well, it's important to remember that symbols and rituals
Yeah.
can have multiple meanings and interpretations.
Of course.
What might seem sinister to one person could be completely harmless to another.
Right.
It all depends on your perspective
Yeah.
and the context.
Right. So we need to be careful about jumping to conclusions
Would do
based on our own biases
Yes.
or preconceived notions.
Yes.
We need to consider
all the possibilities.
all the possibilities.
Right.
And I think you mentioned this term earlier, and I'm really curious about it.
Okay.
Moral panic.
Oh, yeah.
Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, a moral panic is basically this
Quickly.
widespread fear,
Okay.
often irrational, that something or someone is threatening the values, the
Right.
safety, or the well-being of a community or society.
So are you suggesting that the fear surrounding the Bohemian Grove is just a moral panic?
I'm suggesting that we need to be aware
Okay.
of how fear and speculation can be amplified, especially in this age of information overload.
Right.
I mean, we're bombarded with information constantly
Yeah.
from so many sources. It's hard to sort through it all.
It can be difficult to separate
Very difficult.
facts from fiction.
Yes, especially when a story taps into our existing anxieties.
It's easy to get swept up in a narrative,
It is.
especially one that confirms our biases
Right.
and offers a simple explanation
Faulty answer.
to these complex events.
Right, and that brings us to the power of narrative itself.
Okay, so I'm sensing a connection here to how Jones presents his information
You got it.
in the documentary.
Yeah, Jones is a master storyteller,
He's very good at what he does.
He is.
Whether you agree with him or not,
Yeah, for sure.
he's good at what he does.
He constructs these narratives
Yeah.
that are very compelling.
Uh-huh.
He draws the listener in,
Right.
creates a sense of urgency.
Yeah, he uses,
He uses vivid language,
vivid language.
dramatic music,
Yeah.
carefully selected visuals.
To kind of evoke those emotional responses
Absolutely.
that bypass critical thinking.
Exactly. He positions himself as the hero,
Right, the one who's bravely
the one who's exposing the truth,
exposing the truth
fighting against powerful forces
and protect the innocent.
to protect us.
Right, and he paints the Bohemian Grove members as the villains
Right.
engaged in these sinister plots that threaten our freedom
Right.
and
A
well-being.
classic hero versus villain narrative, and it's incredibly effective.
It's very effective.
It taps into our desire
Yeah,
for those clear-cut explanations
Right.
and easy answers,
sure.
especially when it comes to complex issues
Right.
like global politics or
Yeah.
societal problems.
It's comforting to believe that there's a group of people pulling the strings,
It is.
even if those people are evil.
It's almost like a psychological defense mechanism, right?
Right. It's easier to believe in a conspiracy
Yeah.
than to face the overwhelming complexity of the world.
Than to deal with the nuances and the
No.
ambiguities. And that's why conspiracy theories can be so seductive, right?
Right. They offer this simple solution to
Yes.
complex problems.
Often scapegoating
Yeah.
a particular group or individual.
Right. And once you buy into that narrative,
Yeah.
it becomes difficult to consider
Very difficult.
alternative explanations
Yeah.
or to acknowledge evidence that contradicts your beliefs.
You start seeing everything through the lens of that conspiracy.
Right. So how do we avoid getting caught up in these narratives?
Yeah.
How can we be more critical consumers of information?
Right.
Especially in a world where it's so easy to spread misinformation.
That's the million-dollar question.
It is.
And it's something we all need to be actively thinking about.
Yeah, and I think we're going to have to leave that for part 2.
We'll have to pick that up.
Yeah, because this has been a fascinating start to our deep dive.
It has.
We've just scratched the surface, and I'm already feeling like
Yeah.
I need to rethink how I approach information.
Mm-hmm.
Let's pick up this conversation in part 2
Absolutely.
and explore some of these ideas further.
Sounds good. So, picking up where we left off,
Yeah.
I think it's worth circling back to
Right?
that cremation of care ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
Jones presents it as this deeply disturbing ritual,
Right.
but are there other ways to
Right.
interpret it?
Yeah, I was thinking about that too,
Okay.
Remember that the Bohemian Grove was initially founded
Right.
by artists and writers.
Right. Right.
Could this whole ceremony be a form of artistic expression? Maybe a theatrical performance
Yeah.
with symbolic elements.
That's a really interesting perspective.
Yeah.
Many cultures have traditions
Oh.
of burning effigies
Huh?
to symbolize letting go
Okay.
of negative emotions or
Yeah.
past transgressions, right?
Sure.
It's a way of
Yeah.
cleansing and starting anew.
Like a symbolic purging of burdens or worries.
Exactly.
Okay.
Think about,
Yeah.
festivals like Burning Man,
Uh-huh.
where they have those elaborate effigies
Right.
that are set ablaze. It's a cathartic experience,
Yeah.
a way of releasing pent-up energy
Sure.
and embracing change.
So maybe the cremation of care is more about symbolic renewal
Perfect.
than actual sacrifice.
The name itself, right, cremation of care,
Cremation of care, yeah.
suggests a deliberate act of letting go of anxieties
Okay.
and embracing a more carefree state of being.
That makes a lot of sense. But there's still that giant owl statue.
Right.
It's hard to ignore that imagery,
I know.
especially with all the symbolism associated with owls.
Yeah.
So how do we reconcile that?
Well, the owl is a powerful symbol, but
Mm.
remember,
Yeah.
symbols can have multiple layers of meaning.
Okay.
While the owl can be associated with darkness and the unknown,
Uh-huh.
it can also represent wisdom and a connection to nature.
Okay.
And remember, the Bohemian Grove is
Yeah.
nestled in a redwood forest.
It is.
So it wouldn't be surprising
Right.
if nature played a significant role in their rituals and symbolism.
That's a good point. Like, they're acknowledging
Right.
the power and mystery of the natural world,
Yeah.
recognizing that there are forces greater than themselves.
Perhaps. And by symbolically burning away their cares,
Yeah.
they're also affirming their commitment to creativity
Okay.
and enjoying life to the fullest.
Okay, that's a much different interpretation
That's
than
fair.
the sinister agenda
Right.
that Jones puts forward.
Yeah, but...
But I'm still curious about the secrecy surrounding the Bohemian Grove.
Yeah.
Why not just be open about what they're doing?
Right.
Wouldn't that dispel
Mhm.
some of the speculation?
Well, that's the question, isn't it?
it is.
That has puzzled a lot of people.
Yeah.
There are a few arguments for why the secrecy persists.
Okay, like what?
Well, some say it's necessary
Okay.
to protect the privacy and freedom of expression of the members.
Right, because these
Yep.
are,
Incredibly powerful.
they're incredibly powerful and influential people.
They probably want a space where they can
They do.
just let loose, be themselves,
Right.
engage in creative pursuits without fear of judgment.
Right, without the pressure of
Yeah.
cameras and the constant scrutiny of the media.
Right. You'd probably want a place where you could truly relax
Yeah.
and be yourself.
And they argue that this kind of open, unguarded interaction
Mm-hmm.
is essential for fostering creativity
Okay.
and building relationships.
Right. But even if they were completely transparent about everything,
Yeah.
it's unlikely to fully quell the conspiracy theories. That's true.
Some people are always going to believe
They are.
there's something more going on.
Right. Something sinister lurking beneath the surface.
That's true. People often see what they want to see,
They do,
regardless of the evidence.
regardless of the facts.
It's like that saying, a belief is a hard thing to shake.
It is.
So it's like a self-perpetuating cycle.
It is.
The secrecy fuels speculation,
Right.
which in turn leads to more secrecy.
It's a catch-22.
Yeah.
But let's get back to Jones's documentary for a moment.
Okay.
One of his central claims
Yeah.
is that the rituals at Bohemian Grove
Hmm.
are evidence of this sinister agenda for world domination.
Right. He connects the Bohemian Grove
He does.
to this larger conspiracy
Right.
involving global elites controlling world events
Mm-hmm.
and manipulating populations.
Right. He throws in terms like the New World Order,
The New World Order.
the Illuminati, all sorts of other shadowy organizations.
Yeah, and he often lumps the Bohemian Grove in
He does.
with other groups, right? It's
Yeah.
like the Trilateral Commission,
The Trilateral Commission, huh?
the Council on Foreign Relations,
Yeah.
the Bilderberg Group.
Right. Suggesting they're all part of this
Yeah,
grand scheme to control the world.
right. He paints this picture of this highly coordinated
Yeah.
and secretive network of elites
Yeah.
working behind the scenes to undermine democracy
Undermine democracy.
and establish a totalitarian world government.
It's important to note that
Yeah.
many of these organizations do exist,
They do.
and they do involve powerful people
Yeah,
discussing global issues.
okay.
They often hold private meetings and conferences,
Right, which further fuels
which fuels the speculation, of course.
the speculation.
Yeah.
But is there any real evidence
Right.
to suggest they have this nefarious agenda?
That's the question, isn't it?
It is.
For world domination?
Right.
Or is that more of a product of
Yeah.
Jones's storytelling and interpretation?
Right. So how do we separate fact from fiction?
Yeah.
When it comes to claims about powerful groups
Yeah, it's the tough.
and their influence on global events,
It feels like a minefield
it does.
out there.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's essential to
Yeah.
develop those critical thinking skills
Oh.
and to approach information
Yeah.
with a discerning eye.
Okay.
A good starting point
Yeah.
is to look at the evidence.
Okay. The evidence, what do we have?
Right. What are the concrete actions and policies of
Mm.
these groups?
Okay.
Do they actually align
Right.
with the claims being made about their motives?
So look beyond the rhetoric and examine their actual track record.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Look for evidence of actual harm or wrongdoing,
Okay.
not just speculation or conjecture.
Right. So just because a group of powerful people meet in secret
Right.
doesn't automatically mean they're plotting to take over the world.
Exactly. There might be other
Yeah.
less nefarious reasons for their secrecy.
Okay.
It's about applying that critical thinking, considering all sides of the issue,
Right.
and avoiding jumping to conclusions.
Okay. I'm starting to see
Okay.
the importance of taking a more nuanced approach.
Good. Good.
But let's zoom back in on the Bohemian Grove.
Okay.
If we strip away all the speculation and the conspiracy theories,
Yeah.
what can we actually say with certainty about this place?
Well, we can say that it's a real place.
Okay.
It's a private club
Mm-hmm.
with a long history.
Okay.
We know it involves a group of mostly men,
Uh-huh.
many of whom hold positions of power and influence.
Oh.
They gather annually
Right.
for a retreat that includes
Okay.
rituals and ceremonies.
So the basic facts are clear.
The basic facts are clear.
But beyond that,
Yeah.
it's mostly interpretation.
Interpretation and
Yeah.
speculation.
Right.
And that's where critical thinking becomes absolutely crucial.
We need to be aware
We do?
of our own biases
Mm-hmm.
to question the narratives we're presented with
Yes.
and to demand evidence.
Demand evidence, absolutely.
Because the truth is often much more complex
Yeah, it is.
than any single narrative can capture.
Absolutely.
And it's important to remember that
Mm-hmm.
not every mystery has a clear-cut answer.
That's right.
Sometimes the most honest answer
Mm-hmm.
is, I don't know.
I don't know.
And I think that's a healthy approach to have
It is.
when dealing with complex topics,
It is.
like the Bohemian Grove.
Yeah, so I'm really eager to hear more about this whole concept of power dynamics.
Yeah.
And how it relates to the Bohemian Grove.
But I think that's a perfect place to pause for now.
Okay.
Let's dive into those ideas in part 3.
Yeah.
You know, I've been thinking about this whole power dynamic thing
Yeah.
a lot since our last conversation.
Mm-hmm.
It's really got me thinking about, like,
Yeah.
the role of power and secrecy,
Mm-hmm.
especially when it comes to groups like the Bohemian Grove.
It's a fascinating aspect of this whole story, isn't it?
It is.
You've got this group of
Yeah.
incredibly powerful and
Yeah.
influential people
Right.
gathering in secret,
Yeah.
engaging in rituals that, to outsiders, might seem strange or even threatening.
Right.
It naturally creates this
Yeah.
sense of unease,
Sure.
this suspicion that they might be up to something
Right.
they don't want the rest of us to know about.
Right. It's like they're operating in a world
Exactly.
that's completely separate from
Very-
the everyday lives of
Yeah.
ordinary people.
And it really feeds into this, like,
Yeah.
broader societal anxiety about power.
Uh-huh.
You know, about who has it, how they use it,
Right.
whether it's being used responsibly.
Especially in today's world,
Yeah.
where there's this growing awareness of like income inequality and the influence of like wealthy individuals and corporations on politics and policy.
Right. There's this perception, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's justified or not, that the system is rigged in favor of the elite, that the rules are different for them, and that they're making decisions that benefit themselves at the expense of everyone else.
So when you have a group like the Bohemian Grove that's shrouded in this secrecy and exclusivity, it almost becomes like a symbol of that disconnect between the elites and the rest of society.
And their rituals, right.
Right.
Those strange ceremonies that Jones focuses on in his documentary, they only heighten that sense of mystery and suspicion, right? It's like they're speaking a different language.
Right.
Operating on a different plane of existence.
I'm remembering that term you mentioned earlier, moral panic.
Oh, yeah.
Could this fascination and fear surrounding the Bohemian Grove
possibly
be an example of that?
It's certainly possible.
Okay.
Moral panic often arises when there's a perceived threat to societal norms or values. And in this case, you know, the secrecy surrounding the Bohemian Grove, coupled with the high-profile membership and the strange rituals, it feeds into this fear that something sinister is going on. Something that threatens the established order.
So it's not necessarily about like the actual activities taking place at the Grove, but rather the public's perception of those activities and how they fit into a larger narrative of power.
It's the stories we tell ourselves about what might be happening.
Right, exactly.
And those stories can be incredibly powerful, shaping our beliefs and influencing our actions.
Okay, so we have this group that symbolizes power and secrecy, operating in a world that most of us have no access to. It naturally raises concerns about accountability and transparency.
It does.
But how do we engage in a meaningful dialogue about power? Without falling into the trap of conspiracy theories or resorting to like simplistic solutions. It feels like such a delicate balance.
It is. It's a complex issue with no easy answers. I think it starts with recognizing that power dynamics are inherently complex and multifaceted. Power isn't always a bad thing. It can be used for good or for ill, depending on the intentions of those who wield it.
So it's not necessarily about eliminating power altogether, but rather about ensuring that it's used responsibly.
And that there are mechanisms in place to hold those in power accountable.
We need systems of checks and balances, transparency and decision-making. And like a free and independent press that can scrutinize those in power.
But we also need to be careful about falling into the trap of demonizing entire groups of people or attributing every negative event to some grand conspiracy.
It's important to avoid making generalizations or assumptions based on someone's wealth, status, or affiliations.
We need to engage in those nuanced conversations, consider multiple perspectives, and challenge our own assumptions.
It's about finding that sweet spot between healthy skepticism, which I think is essential for holding power accountable, and outright cynicism.
Which can lead to distrust and disengagement.
I love that phrase, healthy skepticism.
It's a good one.
It is.
It's about questioning things, demanding evidence, not taking things at face value, but doing so with a critical yet open mind.
And recognizing that even the most powerful individuals are still human beings.
They are.
With their own flaws and biases.
And motivations. For sure.
Okay, I'm starting to see the bigger picture here.
Okay, good.
But let's bring it back to the Bohemian Grove one last time. Even if we accept that it's nothing more than a social club for powerful people, a place where they can unwind and be themselves.
Yeah.
The fact that it exists, the fact that it's shrouded in secrecy, and that it fuels so much speculation, it tells us something about our society, doesn't it?
It absolutely does.
Okay.
It reflects.
What could tell us?
It reflects our fascination with power.
Okay.
Our anxieties about the unknown and our desire for clear-cut explanations in a world that's often confusing and unpredictable.
We crave certainty.
We do.
And when we can't find it, we sometimes create our own narratives to fill in those gaps.
We do, even if those narratives aren't based in reality.
Right. So I think the real value of exploring this topic, of delving into like the mysteries and controversies surrounding the Bohemian Grove.
Right.
It's not necessarily about uncovering some hidden truth.
No.
But about understanding ourselves better.
I think that's right.
It's about recognizing the patterns of human behavior that lead us to embrace certain narratives and reject others. It's about understanding how power dynamics shape our perception.
Absolutely.
And influence our beliefs.
It's about developing those critical thinking skills, becoming more discerning consumers of information, and engaging in thoughtful dialogue about these complex issues.
This has been an incredibly insightful journey.
It has.
We've gone from like shadowy rituals and conspiracy theories and a deeper understanding of power, secrecy, and the narratives we construct to make sense of the world.
We've explored the history of the Bohemian Grove.
We have
examined the claims made by Alex Jones and delved into, the broader social and psychological forces at play.
It's been quite a deep dive.
It has.
So as we wrap up this exploration, what would you say are the key takeaways for our listeners?
I think the most important takeaway is the importance of critical thinking.
Critical thinking.
Question everything.
Okay.
Seek out multiple perspectives. Demand evidence.
Okay.
Don't just blindly accept what you're told, even if it comes from a seemingly authoritative source.
And remember that the world is full of nuance and complexity.
It is.
There are rarely easy answers.
Yeah.
Or simple explanations.
Embrace curiosity.
Okay.
Be open to the possibility that there are things you may never fully understand.
Sure.
Mysteries that may never be solved.
It's okay to say, I don't know.
It is.
And it's even better to say, I want to learn more.
Absolutely.
Keep asking questions.
You keep exploring.
Keep exploring.
Keep challenging
your own assumptions.
Our assumptions.
That's how we grow. That's how we learn.
Yeah.
And that's how we become more informed and engaged citizens.
Well said. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into the Bohemian Grove.
The Bohemian Grove.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
On this journey of discovery.
Yeah.
Until next time. Stay curious.
Stay curious.
And keep exploring.
Keep exploring.
This fascinating and sometimes unsettling
world
around us.
See you next time.